So the Copenhagen side plank is probably the hardest exercise that we will do. I don't mean to preface it that way, but it's an incredibly difficult exercise. It's going to work your adductors, which are your inner thigh muscles. It's also going to work your obliques. Oh my God, yay, we're doing some abs. We're doing it for the adductors primarily, but the obliques are absolutely along for the ride and they're totally going to work. And so a lot of you guys have probably done something like a side plank, something like, something like this or whatever. It's a very similar setup, except for having your feet on the ground. We're going to have one foot up here and I'll show you in just a moment. Before I do, I'm going to show it to you as prescribed. It's probably the hardest version of the exercise, and it's one that you can absolutely try. But we're going to go through 2 regressions, and people don't like that word because then they feel weak. But let me just be totally upfront with you. The regressions are, how do I say this? I bet that most people are going to start with the regressions and work their way up because it's a really, really difficult exercise, and there's no shame in that whatsoever. And so what I want you to set up with is your elbow on the ground with your palm down and a bench a little bit, as you straighten out your legs, that's where I want the bench to be. Your top foot or your top shoe is going to be on top of the bench. And I'm going to show it to you as prescribed, kind of full version of the movement. It looks like this. So essentially what's happening, again, it's a static hold. I'll go through, you could pretend like I held that for 20 seconds here. What we're doing essentially is kicking out our bottom leg and just holding it underneath the bench here. These muscles are the ones that are keeping me up in a side plank position. My obliques are certainly working as well, but it's the inner thigh muscles of the leg on top of the bench that are really working incredibly hard here. And so again, this is what it looks like in full force. The body's in one nice straight line. My adductors are working like crazy, and we're holding this position for a given number of seconds, and we're going to try and progress that over time. Now I'm going to show you 2 regressions that, again, if you get caught and you're like, hey, I can barely hold myself up there, or I can't do the full 20 seconds or whatever, I want you to choose one of these 2 regressions here. First, let me backtrack. If you get into this position, but you can't put your foot under here because maybe your bench doesn't allow it, or you're using a different surface that doesn't allow it, you can get into this position and just keep your leg bent like this. It's totally fine. So for the 2 regressions, the first one is going to be the same setup as what I just showed you, but you're going to keep your other leg on the ground. And what that's going to do, it's going to allow this leg to support or take off some of the body weight or the work from this leg. And so you'd get into this position here, and you won't have to, or this leg won't have to do all the work on its own. I think that's a really great one. Make that top leg work as hard as possible, but that right leg's kind of spotting you a little bit, which again, I think works really great. As for the second regression, the only change is instead of having your legs straight with your foot on the bench, we're going to get a little closer, and you're going to have your knee, shin, and ankle all on the bench. And again, we're going to be up in this position like this, with your knees now being the thing that's hugging the bench. And I find this regression to be incredibly comfortable, actually. And if you do the original version and you have any knee pain, then I do think this regression is going to work incredibly well. I know I said I like the other regression. The reason I like the other regression as well is because you have the opportunity to spot yourself as much or as little as necessary. But from a comfort standpoint, having your knee, shin, and ankle on the bench makes this a more comfortable movement to hold. And I do think that for a lot of you guys, that's going to work incredibly well. So chances are I've given you an amount of time that I want you to hold this exercise, and we're going to progress it over time. It's not something that we are focused so much on in terms of progression, like I did 20 seconds, now I need to do 21 seconds. Although that is the idea, I think a lot of you guys will progress in terms of quality of the movement, quality of what you're doing, a little bit less shaking, and overall quality progressing over time. Although we will be progressing the actual time that we're doing it, I'm just not so concerned with that. I really want people to spend this program, or if this is the second or third time you've done it, working on the quality of the movement.